So let's get started. This is the future of global utility mapping 5 years out. It's a roundtable discussion. So got a pretty loose agenda. We have brought in some industry experts to discuss how we see things progressing in our utility mapping market, and certain elements we will try and cover, for instance, technology, regulation, these kinds of things. Okay, but we're going to play this fairly loose, without too many restrictions, and see where the discussion takes us. Okay. A little bit of housekeeping before we begin. All the participants are muted during the webinar, so we won't be able to hear you. If you want to use the Q&A function, you can. It's on the bottom of the webinar window. You can ask questions. We'll try and answer some questions where possible, right? Wherever they fit into the discussion. We will have the questions recorded anyway, so we can always come back to you after the event if necessary. All the questions and answers are visible to all participants, so bear that in mind. And as always, the sessions are recorded, so you'll get a link where you can re-watch if you want to. This is me. Hello to everybody that already knows me, customers and distributors and everybody else. My name is Paul Collins. I'm a global technical sales manager for Kontur, and I'll be hosting. I'm not going to be contributing too much, I think, but I'll be in the background trying to take care of what's occurring. Okay. Here are your panelists today. We're really pleased to have them with us. They are big influences in our industry, and we're very proud to have them as our customers. I'm going to give them opportunity to introduce themselves. We'll go from left to right. So, Michael, if you want to take the stage for a sec and introduce yourself.
Yep. My name is Mike Twohig. I work with DGT Associates. We're based out of Boston, but we have strategic clients across the U.S. The reason I've been so fortunate to be invited today to participate is that we're a Kontur customer. We've figured out how to expand our business to be able to include the Kontur system, and it's worked out fantastic. So it's a part of our systems to do our subsurface mapping. So we work in all kinds of sectors, but it's a growing field. Unfortunately, I've been able to work as a rookie in this field for 39 years, and I think it's getting more exciting as the years go by. So thanks for having us participate today. Appreciate it.
That's a great intro. Thank you. Sam?
Yeah, good morning from New Zealand, everyone. My name's Sam Wiffen. I'm the Chief Exec and founder of Reveal. It's an honor to be on the call today with, not only some of the great Kontur people that I've had the privilege of engaging with over the last few years, but also Mike and Simon, who are legends in the industry as well. So a bit of an honor. I come from the trenches. I've got an engineering background in building utilities, into then project management, and then starting the business by myself with electromagnetic locators and ground penetrating radar, and have had a wonderful ride up to this point. And it's an honor to be in this industry, and I'm really proud to be in this industry because it's such an emergent place and represents a huge opportunity. So it's a really great privilege to be here today.
Thanks, Sam. Simon, go ahead.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening, everyone. My name is Simon Jefferson. I work for CAT Surveys. CAT Surveys is one of the leading UK surveying businesses, specialising in providing a range of complex specialist data solutions, of which underground utility mapping is definitely a core service of ours. My fellow panelists, absolutely delighted to be on the call. What the industry looks like in 5 years' time is something I'm really interested in, because CAT Surveys is a business that's founded on looking to the future. It's absolutely got kind of innovation and the future at its heart, and how we develop our service, develop our business in response to what's going to happen over the next 5 years is incredibly important to us. We are also a Kontur customer, and CAT Surveys has been an incredibly vocal advocate of using the best technology to get the best results and provide clients with the best value-adding data. And certainly Kontur provides us with that. So yeah, really looking forward to an interesting discussion.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. Nice introductions. So like I say, the topics we got four kind of corner pins really, I guess, that can keep us kind of going. But we're going to keep this open because we don't really want to steer this too much. All right. It's a big topic. We've only got a little bit of time. So we're going to kick this off with a question. But towards the end of the webinar, we'll have some final predictions, okay, where each of the panelists has got a slide where they predict where we might be in 5 years. Okay, so the first topic, just to get us going, really, I guess, is I suppose the foundation of utility mapping, or SU, however you want to describe this practice, is regulation. And where do we really see regulations developing and changing in 5 years? Go ahead.
Okay, I mean, I'll kick us off. I mean, I think for me, this is probably the most important piece of this entire jigsaw about where we're going to get to in the next 5 years. Certainly from a UK perspective, I think regulation and government legislation is absolutely critical in facilitating the whole market of utility mapping and moving forward in a really positive and structured way. One of the things that I think is a real challenge in the market at the moment is there is no standardization. There is industry standards which govern how things should be done, but there is no real framework in which companies are governed. And that means that there is a bit of a patchwork quilt, I think, in terms of quality, which is to the detriment of the industry and to the detriment of the service provided to clients. And I think it devalues the actual service provision and leads to clients almost not realizing the true value of the service they can provide. And I think unless we have a really solid regulatory framework in place to govern what companies do, how they do it, and how they deliver it to clients, I think it's going to be really difficult for us to be, consistent in how we want to develop the market and how we want to really evolve and get better over the course of the next 5 years, which to me is absolutely fundamentally important.
Yeah, I mean, it's one that I kind of think a lot about, because I think there's a very human challenge that underpins all of this. If you look at the subsurface as such a huge environment with so many different stakeholders, you don't typically have one governing body over the top of the whole subsurface. It's not the Ministry of the Subsurface. It particularly moves towards the stakeholders, whether you be the asset owner of the pavement or the road controlling authority or the asset owners individually or the contractors. I think a lot of the regulations and policy are focused towards those individual characters as opposed to the whole. And that's where I think the core challenge comes from. And you look at, there are a lot of standards and policies out there that require people to do a lot of activities that benefit, a digital future. But the human, or the very philosophical nature of like going, oh, bugger it, I'll just bury it. It's out of sight, out of mind. The human plays a key role in that. And it's so hard to get that feedback loop to actually enforce those policies and, make sure the compliance associated with those. So there's this natural disconnect that I think is going to be a huge challenge when you keep looking at these standards to the individual stakeholders.
Yeah, from the perspective in the US, one of the funny things is we have very few laws and regulations requiring subsurface utility mapping, or SUE, as many people in our industry know. And it's pretty disappointing because there's only 3 different states in the US that actually make a law requiring subsurface mapping, and that's the Pennsylvania was one of the originals. We have Colorado and we have Montana have follow suit. So now they're asking for level A and level B data according to our subsurface standards. But I think for us in the next 5 years, we would love to see other states follow, because right now SUE or SUM has been around for 30, 40 years. as an industry, a dedicated discipline, but it's only been a standard of care that we do for the ASE 3802, but there's no governing body requiring people to do this. And that's why we still see there's projects that go awry, that have problems, overruns, because nobody's holding designers, engineers, and asset owners accountable for getting to that level of detail that does make projects safer as well as more cost effective. So I think that's our big thing. We'd like to see more regulation, but it's not our culture in the US to do that.
There's the new California ordinance with the as-built that's popped out. I think that starts January 1st, which is like, it's great to see some of this, emergent, I think all assets must be digitally captured. We need to figure out what digitally captured looks like. But, just that step, I think, it starts to challenge the industry, and, the as-built is really the leak in the ship, right? Like, if we can start to look at that, I think that just raises that education piece. But you're totally right. And I think just those little things start to kind of trickle in are huge for that across it. But yeah, no, I totally agree. And shout out to ASCE 3802 as being like the OG standard for me anyway, and around the adoption of the quality level, framework that's been around the world, which is huge. So it's been, yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, it's been around since 2002, and the new one, of course, supersedes that, 3822. But unfortunately, we still find so many designers, construction managers, asset owners that have never heard of it. So we just don't know if they just don't have internet service or what rock they've been hiding under. But after 20 years of been on the road and presenting and talking and writing about it, we're still amazed at people that do not know what we're talking about, and know that there's a whole industry to uncovering what's underground.
One of the issues that I think is really interesting is the value that the client puts on the data that you're providing. And one of the issues that I see is that the client quite often, gets data as almost a checkbox exercise, a point in time exercise, and doesn't really understand the holistic value that the data can unlock. And I think that's because there is almost a market mistrust of a non-regulated market, because basically anyone can go out, pick up some kit, set themselves up and go out and basically try and find underground utilities, and actually pick up business. And I think unless there is something which is really focused on driving a very level playing field standard of higher quality, it's going to be a real challenge to actually convince the market that you can get more out of this data and you can really drive the value of the data. And I think that's one thing that we're really passionate about. It's convincing clients that there's more that they can do with the data, and almost looking at the data in a kind of cradle to grave kind of way, that you don't just collect it at a point of time to do a service. You collect it and then utilize it and drive value from it. But I think unless we are driving standards, and we are driving consistency, and we are driving quality, it's very difficult to have that conversation with clients, because there is a natural almost mistrust of what they might be getting. And I think legislation is the way to do that. But I do think it is going to be incredibly difficult and require some very, very high profile stakeholders to kind of back a movement towards more legislation and more regulation.
Do you think more states will make this a legal requirement in 5 years' time, Michael?
Absolutely. I think when they see the success from Colorado, Montana, and the amazing thing, when I presented with the utility coordinator in Colorado earlier this year at a conference, and I was amazed, I asked him how they actually got momentum, because, the US is really challenged. It's not about our presidents, it's about our lobbyists that actually stop some of these laws coming into play. So special interest groups make sure these things don't become law, because it could change their business practice. So I asked, how did they get it across the line? And they said it was actually contractors were the ones that got the momentum going to push the legislator to look at this and say, what's the best for us? What's the best for the industry? And what's the best for safety of the public? And so it was amazing to see a contractor pushing it. You'd think it should be engineers and asset owners were the driving force. So I think when they see the success there, I think there's more and more people will get on board and say, we're going to adopt the same model, and the dominoes should fall into place, because it only makes sense.
It does make sense, yeah.
Mike, do you reckon that was purely from what would be the primary driver for the contractors? Is it health and safety?
No, it's stupidity. So
yeah.
really what happens with us in the US, you have a big design firms. I mean, some of these are local, but some of them are the very large firms. They may spend 2 to 3 years doing a major design for a project. And yet in what we consistently see, and we still see it here in the Boston area, is they put a note into the drawings and specifications saying the contractor from the notice to proceed to groundbreaking is responsible for finding all utilities. And we always joke that the only one that can find all utilities, that'll be Jesus, and he doesn't work with us.
Mhm.
And the second part is, why would a contractor be the most talented person to find utilities and then only give them 30 days and an arbitrary dollar amount to find it? So we really think it's, belongs like the ASC planned it. It belongs in preliminary design with existing condition surveys and resolve all of those conflicts so you can do utility coordination. And I think the contractors are tired of saying you're putting all of your design effort and now I have to do your job as well. And that's a heavy burden for a contractor, but anything you find wrong is delays and claims, and they're always fighting. So I think they want to see a better, smoother flow and safety for their workforce on job sites.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The the reporting of this utility mapping service, how are the clients, how do you think the clients are going to start requesting this? How does this change? Because this kind of fits in with the ASCE standard. Clients could ask you for a survey that's in compliance with ASCE 3802, or they could ask you to be in compliance with PAS 128, which has just been updated as well in April this year. How do you think that's going to develop? Is it going to become something that people just take as a given? They just ask you for the survey in that way? Or, because I think PAS 128 is a common language in the UK, right?
Well, it's a common language, but it's a commonly misunderstood language and
Yeah.
wrongly used and wrongly interpreted, and not wanting to take a step back, but that's exactly the point about legislation and regulation. PAS 128 is meant to drive a consistency of standardization across utility mapping, but it doesn't. It drives confusion because the clients don't really understand what they're asking for. They don't understand the standard right. Without having a level of expertise, you can actually get a worse service by stipulating that you want a PAS 128 compliant utility search. And it's, and I think, for me, from a client side, I think the key is going to be, yes, there will be more and more acceptance of standards and using that to try and get the required outcome, but it'll be more about how they receive the data, how the data is feeding into whatever digital models they're using, whatever data environments they're using, whether it can seamlessly transfer into existing models or not. And that's going to be the key driver for me, how you can make the data as accessible as possible into more and more what we're seeing, collaborative working data environments. And that's going to be really interesting, because that then starts to lead into 3D, proper modeling, doing things like proper clash detection within utility mapping, actually starting to then drive the more holistic value of the data that you're extracting.
I saw you guys talking a bit about the Geospatial Commission. Is that more leaning towards this centralized database?
Certainly in the UK, they're trying.
Yeah.
And NUAR, the National Underground Asset Register, is the first kind of tentative steps along that journey. I think it's absolutely the right direction of travel. I think it's a very difficult project to actually get success in, because of the complexity of stakeholders, because of the commerciality of arrangements which are already in place, because of the sensitivity of some data sets, and because actually the starting point is the asset records. So they're starting with the most inaccurate version of the truth. Now you have to start somewhere, and I can see why they're doing it that way. But actually, you're starting with a starting point which is grossly inaccurate and badly maintained. So
bang, like I was going to mention, the data lineage is the big challenge there, and especially going back to your point around, say, PAS 128. It's great for me, it was anyway, running a company, because it standardizes a methodology, and if you're procuring utility surveying as an activity, you could then get apples for apples pricing and make sure that regardless of a variable deliverable, because of soil conditions, utility types, densities, you could standardize the methodology and make sure you have that compliance at that side of it. So that's a real value there. But then to your point, the misuse of the data and the data lineage, and going back to your piece before, Simon, around the regulation, around helping the clients understand what they can do with the data, but also helping the clients understand what they can't do with the data. And I think that alignment of need and data is critical, because, as existing records like the NUAR project becomes more widely available to more people, they'll start to say, oh, this is all here, it's now better. And you're going, well, hold on, no, we need to really sort of say, what is this used for, and what are the appropriate activities and use cases I can use over this data set, and where should I be getting greater data, and what risks are associated with that data set. I'm seeing a massive challenge with technologies as it starts to become more widely available with 3D GIS, with BIM. I mean, a huge importance on BIM in the construction phase, but what's the importance of BIM through the O&M, the operational side? And if you start to look at the phase that NUAR plays, or these, federated type, QLD platforms, predominantly in the GIS environment, that's really around the operational kind of like data management phase. Which, does BIM fall into that? It's probably not appropriate. It's way too heavy. So it's interesting around that transition. I'd see that, 3D CAD deliverables are a snapshot in time, and a great way to kind of timestamp a deliverable and really be clear around, it's our roles as utility surveyors to help educate clients around the kind of, so it's the one-time use, of that data, because it's only a snapshot.
What do we see? Technology in 5 years' time? What's your what's the ideal scenario by then? What are we missing? What are we lacking? What do we need to make our utility mapping business a bit more, I guess, robust, reliable, trusted? What kind of technology improvements do you think we need?
I'm not necessarily sure it's about technology improvements generally. I think it's about an acceptance of embracing innovation in technology that's going to add value. And that's the challenge, because sometimes you can adopt technology for adoption's sake. I've been to a few conferences recently. Great to be back in the room and back touring around actual stands again. But a lot of the technology I see, I'm not sure where the value is. I'm not sure what value it's going to bring. It just seems to be, a lot of it just seems to be new iterations of the same technology. For me, it's about the industry being really open to what is good technology, what is at the cutting edge, what is actually going to add value to the service that I deliver in utility mapping, and really trying to understand what that is. Now, if I think about my business and CAT surveys, for us, it's all about mass data capture. Anything which can help us collect lots of data at the same time, drive optimization in that, whether that's below ground or above ground, whether it's marrying up those different data sets. But that is absolutely what we want to drive at the moment, because that's the most efficient way to collect the data. It gives us more data then to create a value-added output for our clients, and then we feel that we can develop more of a value-adding relationship with clients, which then enables us to educate them more, and it almost becomes a virtuous cycle. But for me, it's definitely not specific technology. It's about being open to innovation and really open to new technology and how it can add value.
Yeah, for our organization, the way we see our industry here is I think we'll still see some advancements in the EMI and the push cart GPR systems, But I think they're not going to disappear in the next 5 years. I think they just keep on evolving and more connectivity, especially to like cloud-based solutions. And we definitely see more clients are looking at reporting issues, whether they can log in and get the data quicker, be able to analyze it, maybe do some documentation of the work we've already done. But for us, I agree with Simon completely. There's some of these things where we see the wearable devices like HoloLens, and you're seeing this information. We see these as great value for visualization, but is it an augmented or mixed reality tools? Are they actionable? Can you say, if I see something on HoloLens and I see, a number of utilities, can I start breaking ground because I'm confident I know what's here? But you really don't know what other features are buried there that may be in danger. So I think we get carried away sometimes with technology just to say it's new technology, but what is actually the fundamentals for us is still going to be CAD and GIS deliverables, having clients store and capture that information. And it's not a data mortality, which I always see as paint on the ground. To me, we don't do paint on the ground because that's complete data mortality. I don't see the value of it. But a lot of our industry is consumed with printing all of that information on streets. We're like Simon. We want to have that information. We want to build and amalgamate all of the files that we have to be more valuable and used to our clients as we go down the road in the future. And that's our IP. And I mean, that's a big part of our work here.
And do you think, Michael, some of the attitude to that, and this is coming from Aidan actually, so in our Q&A box. I mean, do you think that because in the US you have the one call system, which is free, I guess, do you think that because the attitude is, well, I can just call these guys up and they come out and they'll mark up what's meant to be there for basically for nothing? Why would you commission someone else to do it, right? A bit like what we have dial before you dig and all those kinds of other things around the world, right? Sam, I don't know if you have the same kind of things as well, but if you have those options, is there an attitude there that they think, well, I'll just do that and that's enough?
Yeah, we fight that every day. We do have customers call and say, I can't believe I got to spend this kind of money to get a digital file explaining to me where the underground infrastructure is. And if you call the one call or the 811, they're going to come out and paint it. The big difference is that paint on the ground, you never know if you've got 60%, 80%, or 99%. And then, of course, you only get that 2 or 3 days before groundbreaking. So any surprises that show up from the one call and the paint on the ground, there's absolutely nothing you can do. Your design is already planned, your groundbreaking, your permits are planned. And so everything goes off the rail. So when you hear about US projects with massive overruns and delays like the California high-speed rail project, it's pretty predictable why it's not going on time and on budget. So the whole intent of the 811 is you're still supposed to do that utility mapping in the design phase and have an existing condition set of drawings that's in contract documents that the contractor can build. And then the real safety net is that when they do the one call, that the contractor can take a device, and maybe it's a tablet or phone, whatever, and be able to go out and say that the paint matches exactly what's on our documents. So they feel that the asset owner and the design team are on the same page moving into construction. But it's not an either or. You really should be doing both to have the real safety in our projects.
I think that's the key. We're at this really interesting, it's cool to look at what's 5 years out. If you looked at it, and I'm obsessed with the reality of the problems that were like, why are we here to do utility surveying? Like, what's the intent of people consuming this information? And when if you went to a contractor, out in the field and you said, hey, I've got the most accurate, complete 3D model of this entire site, and he'll go, who cares? Like, I just need paint on the ground. Like, the reality for that contractor is going, I just need to put my excavator here and not hit the utility. We don't have the trust yet in digital solutions, or the competence, or the accuracy. If you look at even like the HoloLens or mixed reality type solutions, the positioning is an absolute nightmare unless you need to be a surveyor to then position the device. But then you also need to have the data presented the right way on that device. Paint on the ground, I do completely agree with you, Mike, as well. But it's a solution there that we have to accept, is that is the predominant way through contractors, preventing harm. And I talked to contractors in the field and I said, what could be the number one thing that we could do to stop utility strikes? And they say, well, you're doing it. And I said, what's that? And they go, well, by you mapping utilities up front and the engineers consuming that information, you're actually putting contractors away from harm by designing away from the utilities that are there. The problem is you'll get on site and you've got a complete disconnect between the mapped utilities and also the existing records and also the competence of the people marking out. Technology plays a challenging role with the manufacturing of equipment. It's getting cheaper and easier to use. There's no regulations. You don't need a pilot's license to fly GPR. And through that wider adoption, I think we're going to see contracting firms to consume and use this sort of technology a lot more, which probably poses more of a risk because, you know, the competence is there. And does that mean that we're going to have that there? And, you know, the big one for me as well is the role of machine learning and artificial intelligence in the processing of data to make it quicker, which is all good. The role of 5G is a massive piece around the positioning. You look at visual positioning systems of assets, which, you know, reduces our reliance on satellites. You know, I think there's this really fascinating piece that we're all heading towards, of this confluence of new technologies, but a real risk around the adoption and of how we use this in a project from the nose to tail. I think different technologies will feed in and probably pose risks in different areas.
Yeah, you touched on something there, Sam, that I think we can steer this in a slightly different direction. So these kinds of approaches, and we all hear about this, you know, AI stuff and all this kind of thing that's happening. You know, and I mean, I'm a utility surveyor. I know how much hard work is required to actually make these models. It's not flying a drone. It's not just walking around. It's physical work. And it would be interesting to find out from you guys what you see as your business model in 5 years' time. How do you make money from this industry as things start to develop? You know, these things are coming. Do you think that there's a threat with these types of technologies and ideas coming in our direction? Is there something we need to be considering as our how to make money in this industry in 5 years' time?
Definitely think there's as the technology becomes more accessible and the processing power of computers becomes ever greater, there is going to be, I think, a natural drive towards automation and stuff becoming much more automated, which obviously poses a threat to the expertise inherent within the industry, because we are selling expertise at the moment. That is, you know, that's what we do. However, it's a threat in so much as potentially companies might insource it, civils contractors might do a lot more of this themselves. But actually, I think it also opens a real opportunity to think a bit more, a bit broader in terms of data, because, you know, what we need to focus on is complementary data. What data marries up very nicely together? How can you join different data sets? How can you look at the below ground, the above ground simultaneously? How can you build more holistic models? How can you really start to kind of think much more holistically about the value of the data you're collecting? And I think if, as a business, if you can get that right, then you can create a very powerful value proposition to the end client, which is very, very difficult to replicate without a level of expertise. So I do think there's a threat in there, but I also think there's a huge opportunity as we, you know, go on this digital transformation journey, which all businesses are on at the moment. You know, I think there will be winners and losers, but I think if you can really embrace that and you can start to look at digital as a real opportunity, then there is a massive opportunity to really deliver value to clients.
Yeah, for us, we don't see much of a threat in our industry. If anything, with all the technology, it could be very advantageous. We think because it's you know, you look back at my career 30, 40 years ago, it wasn't very sexy to be a utility surveyor. Now with all the technology we're getting, the LiDAR and SLAM solutions and, you know, these radar systems and cloud solutions, we're seeing a lot of young, talented people that would have gone to other industries are attracted to our industry, which gives us a better gene pool for, you know, our successors in the industry. So we do see that all of the change is actually a lot for the good. You know, our clients are going to be smarter. We're going to get more work. And even if we are seeing exactly what Simon said, 10 years, in the last 10 years, we've seen contractors buy all kinds of LiDAR, do their own BIM modeling, get involved with locating and buying GPR and pipe locating systems. And so we're not seeing any loss of revenue because of this. But I definitely think, you know, it's you know, like the cliche says, the rising water raises all ships. So we're just delighted the way everything is changing and coming in and attracting new talent so we can grow in our industry.
Yeah, I'd say if you look at what we've been doing and selling time effectively, selling our expertise and time and service, would that be completely disrupted? Definitely not within 5 years. But I think the emergence of new internal maturity levels of asset of customers would be a new opportunity, because we'll have to adopt to those. If you look at, say, large asset owners, big utilities, move to more of like an enterprise data management system internally, they'll stop going out and procuring one-off data sets, and they'll start looking at their internal data set and saying, well, how do I take this from crappy GIS design to, you know, really accurate as-builts coming in? And if they look at that whole data lineage around their assets themselves, the procurement goes, rather than from a project to project basis, to more of an enterprise data piece. And I think that's an opportunity for us in the industry to work with these individuals to improve their data set, as opposed to providing one-offs all the time. And that's that overarching management. So I say the adoption of new data principles would be an opportunity for us. Yeah, the sale of data is an interesting one because it's quite reactive. But for me as well, here, you know, we get us to go and map the same things over and over again. And, you know, we can charge good money to go through and do that. But is that the most appropriate use of funds? And will that be disrupted in a tragedy of the commons type scenario? Then possibly not, if I'm facetious in the way that it would play out. But I think that education and adoption is going to drive these new internal models. And we can't do it. Like, it's definitely attracting more and more people to the industry, which is great, but not enough if you look at how we really try and mitigate a lot of these risks. And I think without bringing more people, you know, we could charge more and more, have lots of utility locators out there. If the contractors are starting to use the technology more, that's a cost reduction for them. I love your point around, you know, the rising water raises all the ships. I completely agree. I've not seen us reduce our revenue because contractors have started to use GPR and EML a lot more. I think what that's done is the benefit of the education across the whole industry. It has been great. So it's really, really cool to see. But yeah, I really think we'd all benefit from a more mature understanding from the asset owners, being those road controlling authorities, utilities, to understand their overarching data journey, as opposed to really looking at the capitalized projects one-off, because that's when we just get into that really isolated and blinkered view of the world.
And education, Sam, you touched on that. I mean, education is a key one. I mean, is subsurface utility mapping properly supported? I mean, is this a career choice for somebody out of university? I mean, is there something? I mean, is there a course? Is there something? I mean, it's combined. There's so many principles involved, and I don't know if people realize that.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not just surveying, is it? There's a lot involved in utility mapping.
Yeah, and I suppose the sense that I mentioned education was not so much around the education of practitioners entering the market. It's more of wider education of an industry. You know, like Mike said, you know, we've got 20 years of ASCE 3002 being out there, and people still haven't heard of it. And you're going, we need to educate the industry around the importance of utility surveying, the importance of as-builts, the importance of that whole data ownership piece. So I think for me, it's like a wider education piece, as opposed to, you know, I think the UK's done incredibly well with the way that you look at utility surveyors as a discipline, and really having a funnel of people coming out of universities and schools and tertiary education environments to seeing that as a career. You know, I employ a lot of geologists and geophysicists, and the great thing is there's such a variety. It's, you know, the LiDAR components, the CAD, the project management. It's such a phenomenal opportunity as an individual to be in an environment to learn so many different new piece of technology, but that's I don't think that's the massive barrier. The massive barrier is just the wider industry education around the importance of utility information underground, and that's a role for all of us to play. But how do we increase that? That's the big gap. You know, how do we educate people? The GIS data is that lineage is maybe appropriate for these use cases. So it's that's an enormous piece.
Yeah, for us in the US, one of our biggest challenges, and it's not just utility surveyors, but land surveyors in general. There's all of the geospatial programs have withered away. A lot of the universities and schools don't teach survey programs anymore, and even if they do, it's only a small component of a civil engineering program or that kind of a track. So we're not seeing enough of trained survey professionals, never mind utility surveyors, coming out of third level education. And we're left, I'm sure Simon has got the same cases, we're left with training everybody from scratch. So you get a third level education, you come to work, and then we have to teach you from scratch how to do this industry. And there's a lot to learn over the years. You know, it takes years to get a utility surveyor up to speed. We don't have much in the US, but I know the UK is much further ahead with not only their training programs and actually having certifications like they do in Australia, just have certified locators. We don't have anything like that in the US. So the burden is all inside our own organizations to build the industry from the ground up.
I have to say, in the UK, there's a massive pressure on that kind of formalised surveying education, and you know, I don't know of many further education establishments which will offer it, you know, as a particular course, and it does pose a massive challenge because qualified expert people are very difficult to find. We've actually taken the decision that we don't really try and find them. We try and find really eager, enthusiastic people with the right attitude, and actually, you know, take them and train them and do it ourselves, because actually that's a much easier way to go. And it's all about attitude then. And if you've got the right attitude and you're prepared to learn and you really want to, you know, learn from a good company, then, you know, it seems to be a really good way to do it. But I do think you're right, Paul. There is a real educational challenge, and there is a real challenge about attracting people, keeping people, and really having that longevity of the profession moving forward.
Okay, thanks, guys. Do you want to share your final predictions? Simon, do you want to go first?
Okay, I can do.
Just because you're on my top left, I'm going to go top left to bottom right.
Let me know when you can see that. Is that shared? Oh no, I haven't clicked the button. There we go. You'd think after 2 years of doing this through COVID, I'd have learned just about.
In 5 years, we might all be able to do that.
Yeah,
and
in 5 years,
also,
I'll be able to share my screen.
and also not mute yourself by accident.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, 5 years out, my predictions. Well, maybe not a flux capacitor, maybe not a time traveling DeLorean, maybe a hoverboard, maybe jet powered Nikes. Who knows? I'm going to go over a lot of the stuff I've already talked about. For me, in 5 years, I'd really like to see a very strong supporting legislative framework in the UK to drive quality, to drive standardizations, and to drive just more trust in the work, the really good work that's being done by lots and lots of companies. I think mass data, connected data is going to be really important. I see a huge move towards joining up data sets, as I've talked about, making data sets more synergistic, and really trying to extract maximum value from the data that you're collecting, rather than just thinking about data in a specific for a specific service or for a specific point in time. I think we'll get to a point where we are actually talking about really smart data environments. I mean, today we touched on it, you know, augmented reality and HoloLens and data visualization is kind of it's getting there, but it's in its infancy. But I think in 5 years, you know, with the way things are developing at pace, we will have real smart data environments. We will have real collaborative data environments. And what I would like to see is these being really open with lots and lots and lots of really good data being put into them, not just, you know, specific data sets, but lots of data. So really maximizing those environments. And then lastly, for me, it's really about increasing the value of data, and that's from a client side. That's from a market perspective. Really hoping that the industries that we work in, so large civil engineering, these kind of industries, start to get a much better idea of the real value of the data that we provide as an industry.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Michael?
Yeah, so for me, I don't have a slide up there, but what I do think in the 5 years out, there's a few things that come to mind. One is that I think we're going to see that our industry is continuing to grow at an alarming rate. I think we're going to look back and say, you know, this was really just the tip of where it accelerated into being a much broader discipline and a more widely adopted. For us in the US, I think we're definitely going to see more states adopt the law, so that we're going to see improvements in our regulation and the adoption, and forcing people and not just hoping for designers to do the right thing. They'll be forced to do the right thing, like the Colorado and Montana are doing. I think you're going to see more adoption of multi-sensors, you know, the Kontur type systems out there. But what other things we've been adding is Kontur to improve positional accuracy, because I'm urban environment, and a lot of places GPS is just not always good enough to get us the results we want. I think we are going to see some drones, and especially maybe even EMI go from a handheld tool to a mobile tool or a wearable device, where we're seeing whether it's on a drone or a vehicle. I know there's some people out there in technologies looking at how to do an EMI data capture from vehicles in the roadway, because I think that's our biggest danger in the US. As a practitioner out in the middle of roadways, it's really dangerous for us to collect data. I think we're going to see a lot more in the cloud solutions for portals and viewing. And having people hold us accountable, not just for 30 days, 60 days for deliverables. They want to see what we're doing on a daily basis. And as we see the culture shift in some of the young people and the customers that we have, I think they're going to expect that. They're not going to be looking for data a month from now. I think they want to see instantaneous gratifications, as they want to see results, and they want it now. I definitely see that there's going to be a downturn in the paint on the ground. That data mortality makes no sense, especially when we got so many devices, you know, HoloLens tablets. All of that will provide customers in the future a way to be able to take that data and have data mobility. But the biggest thing for me that we see is that asset owners were the ones that, you know, downsized. They replaced, the survey people that were utility surveyors with accountants and bean counters that said, we don't want to keep the maps up to date. We don't want to have good asset records. And we do think that's going to turn around. We think asset owners are eventually going to say, we do need to maintain good records and have a GIS database with high value, high definition data inside their assets.
Mm-hmm. I hope so. I agree with you. I agree with you. We need to start there, I think. Mm-hmm. And Sam, last but not least.
Yeah, look, I kind of erred along the probably boring side. If I love to look at where technology is coming, but I think the real, everyone can see the screen, right?
Yeah, we got it.
I think we're going to see an increase in publicly available data, which comes with its risks, right? If you look at the NUAR project, that's going to start to become, I think, the knee-jerk solution for a lot of states and entities and governing bodies around how they'd start to solve the problem of the underground. But to Simon's point and a lot of others at the start, is that available information becoming more widely available comes with a lot of risks. So we just need to be really careful. But I'd say that would happen definitely a lot more. Digital twin adoption is an interesting one, because digital twins used a lot. I'd say with the challenges in the subsurface space being so many different stakeholders, it becomes more of an information twin type scenario as opposed to an asset twin. If you look at the digital twins are used a lot more for assets, the information twin around that, common data environments, which Simon talked around, how do we use that, will become a little bit more available, I'd say. And then the regulation is going to start to change. But again, I've probably got more of a facetious view around the next kind of 5 years. But really wanted to kind of highlight these as core challenges that we must meet as an industry. The technology 100% is screaming that way. You've got visual positioning systems, you've got 5G, you've got all the mixed reality that's there. they're only as good as what data we start to use towards those. We can map things way faster with AI and better positioning of our radar units and process them a lot faster. But having more data, is that going to be a real opportunity for us out in the world? It has to come with that increased education and understanding from the industry for the people that are procuring and then consuming and then using the data. That's a core challenge that I'd say is out there.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. I'm gonna. There's a couple of questions here we can take a look at, but we're gonna wrap up very shortly. One of the things, Asker, by the way, hello, and thanks for contributing to this webinar for us. And he's kind of right. There's a mention here about subjectivity, in data interpretation as well, especially in GPR. That can be something that is very prevalent. That kind of subjectivity of how accurate the data is, or you have your EML in your hand, picking something up is in this location when it's actually over here. There's some subjectivity and some experience required in being able to determine where these things are. So the accuracy of your models in the end, you need to have this repeatable workflow that's less prone to human error, which is exactly what Asker's point is, and I think you're absolutely right there. I think we've covered most of the open questions, I think, pretty much. I hope that's covered most of our Q&A. And I think last but not least, I want to say thank you to the panel for joining us. It's really nice to have our customers with us, and particularly those that are at the sharp end of this industry. So we really appreciate you sharing the thoughts with us, and of course everyone that's joined us today and logged on, and also for those that are going to watch the recording. We really appreciate your support. Stay in touch with us. You can get us on our website, of course, and on our socials, LinkedIn and such. The next time you'll be able to visit us in person will be in Washington, DC. This is in January 8th to 12th at the Transportation Research Board's annual meeting. So if you're going to be there, please come and see us. And if you want to have a specific conversation surrounding our products, then reach out and we'll arrange a one-to-one meeting with you. Again, thank you very much, and I hope you're all safe and well, and we will see you all again soon.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Guys. Hey, thanks, guys. It's great. Thank you.
Nice meeting all of you.